You are now listening to WSN, the Wolf Sports Network.
Live from Carrollton, Georgia, this is Sports Pack.
Home of the hottest takes.
I'm going to disagree with you right there because the Dallas Cowboys are actually going to have less wins this year than the team that I'm about to talk about. And the team that I'm about to talk about are the Atlanta Falcons.
The hottest debates.
He's the all-time leading scorer, a four-time MVP. LeBron James is the greatest basketball player ever, not MJ.
Yeah, greatest losing in the finals, maybe.
And some of the top interviews in sports radio.
Super Bowl champion, Brad Johnson.
This is Joe Urso, five-time national champion head baseball coach for the University of Tampa.
This is five-time Olympic medalist Alana Myers-Taylor.
This is President Brendan Kelly. You're listening to Sports Pack.
You know what time it is. Wolves country,
Let's ride.
It's a beautiful Thursday night in the city of Carrollton, Georgia, for multiple reasons. The weather's pretty nice, a little warmer today. Sports Pack is on air. And Mr. Gavin Ellis is making his on-air return, baby. Round of applause.
Man, talk about a comeback.
It's been forever.
Your boy was battling sickness. Your boy was bedridden. But it feels great to be back. I'm loving all the new faces in the control room. I haven't met some of you. I'm going to meet some of you after the show. It's great to be back. I'm so excited, man.
Well, now that you're feeling great, you might as well go down to Jefferson's and Carrollton's for their boneless wings. They're served up hot and fresh daily with 20 different sauce options. Run, don't walk to Jefferson's to get yours. Located at 342 Maple Street. Visit their website at jeffersons.com or follow them on Instagram at jeffersons_Carrollton. Huge welcome to our man Richard Reed, and joining us from the upcoming Triple Threat podcast, filling in for Carly, who's in Italy, and Gianna, who's at a very important meeting, Mr. Jackson Schrader.
Yes, sir.
Happy to be here.
My first time on air with you, so I'm really excited.
It's going to be a good time.
I can't wait.
We have a jam-packed show, another news segment. We're talking NFL, NBA, college basketball, but y'all know where we always start Sports Pack.
West Georgia dials up a 29-yard score on 4th and 6.
D1, baby.
Go Wolves.
If you crack open a Webster's dictionary, the definition for dominant used to mean something different. But now, you crack open that Webster's dictionary, you look under the word dominant, you see a picture of Zoddy Jackson and a team picture of this 2023-2024 West Georgia men's basketball team, improving to 18-2, their greatest record ever after 20 games in the regular season, after a dominant 88-57 win over the West Florida Argonauts. Zoddy led the way with 16 points, and that was a little bit of an off game for him. He's been dropping almost 30 every game. Still led all scorers with 16 points. Our guys were dominant, led wire to wire. We were all at the game. Richard, I'm going to kick it off with you. How much confidence do you have that this team is a championship contender, not only at the GSC level, but on the national level?
I feel like I've said it a million times at this point. I'm extremely confident in this team. They've been balling out and persevering through every single game. Zoddy started off shaky, couldn't make his first. I want to say he missed his first 3, 4, maybe 5 shots, but the rest of the team rallied around him, and that's the beautiful thing about this team. Even though Zoddy ended up leading all scorers, he started off shaky. Everybody else kind of stepped up and worked around him. Man, this team's dynamic. We got guys coming off the bench that came in and balled out last night. Number 23 came in. I'm sorry, I don't know his name right now. Number 23 came in when Zoddy was missing shots, came in, fielding at the point guard position, and played very, very well. Man, this team is deep, and this team is talented. We were talking about a pre-show. This team is a little small, but they play small ball effectively. They got used to doing it last year, and this team, I'm extremely confident in this team. I don't even know how many more ways to restructure it. I mean, I'm just very impressed with this team. Each and every single time they've played, I've been impressed. I'm loving it.
I mean, one thing, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
One thing that I've really noticed, last year the team was great, right? You had Michael Zapatakis, you had Jalen Sasser. They went and graduated. They're playing overseas now, and they're balling out. It was a great squad. But one thing that this team has this year, in my opinion, that's a little bit better is the chemistry. You can just tell on the court they really have put the pieces together. They understand one common goal they're trying to reach to. You had a lot of separate personalities, and I get it. Zoddy was new to the team last year. They were trying to still figure each other out. But now that Zoddy has taken this team and made it his own, they all look to him, right? He kind of sets the tone for the culture, sets the tone for the mood of how they want to play, what they want this team to look at, and they've all molded together and meshed very, very well. That chemistry is what's going to take them far in this tournament because, yeah, you can have all the talent in the world, but oftentimes you'll notice the teams that like each other just a little bit more, the teams that want to play for each other just a little bit more, they're going to be the ones that are going to have long-term success and make a deep run.
I just wanted to add on to Richard's point. Number 23 is Malcolm Noel, a transfer we got from Covenant College. Now, at Covenant, he was dominant. Shot over 53% from the field, averaged about 14 points. He was a star. He comes here, he's a bench player. He's behind Zodi. But guess what? He goes in there, he plays with intensity, he plays with passion, he understands his role. And I spoke about it last show, I'm going to speak about it again. We have a generational coach in Dave Moore.
100%.
I pray we pay him. I pray he stays because that man could be coaching high-level Division I college basketball. 100%. He has a motor unlike you've ever seen. He's incredible. He's almost like a Bobby Knight without the chair throwing.
Right.
I mean, this man is still young. He has a lot of ferocity, and he makes the team buy in. They believe under Dave Moore, and I think this team can win a championship because of it.
Most definitely. And, you look at last year's team, the 1-2 punch was Zodi and Michael Zabatakis. But this year, you're looking at Zodi and Cameron Denatlin. I mean, he's been absolutely on fire. Do you want to speak a little bit on Cameron?
Well, it was more on Coach Moore.
Oh, I'm sorry, my fault.
The thing with Coach Moore is I think the mindset that he's given this basketball team is that next man up mentality, but they don't want to throw the other guy aside and take their spot.
Right.
Like, Zodi didn't do great in the first quarter, first half, and 23 came in and balled out. And then when Zodi was doing great again and other guys weren't, that people were just stepping up. And people just want to go in there because they want the team to win. They don't want to have a good stat line.
Right.
And that's why we're so dominant.
Definitely.
Now, our women's team improved to 12-8. They took home a 71-64 W against West Florida.
Beat West Florida for the first time in 3 years. That was huge.
Round of applause for that. That's incredible. And honestly, even though our women's team's not 18-2, I mean, that's a really hard benchmark to clear.
Yeah.
It's really great seeing them not only be competitive, but to be a winning basketball team. Because if you have any idea about the history of West Georgia women's basketball, it's been rough for a very long time.
Yeah.
We brought in our new coach last year, a little bit of a rough transition, but guess what? She's coming from Utah. She's establishing a culture. One thing I've noticed about this women's basketball team, they're playing very well together. They're not playing hero ball. They don't have one girl dribbling down the court trying to do everything herself. I noticed a lot of that the last 3 or 4 years. This team shares the ball. There's great open shots. Now, sometimes they have to hit those open shots, but they're generating open shots. They're doing a lot of great things. Very proud of them.
Now, that's what I was about to say, that's what I like a lot about this women's basketball team. Even though they haven't been winning that many games, they are above 500. They're very competitive in every single game, and you can tell we definitely have the right women's basketball coach here now because, like you said, there was a lot of hero ball, but they moved the ball around a lot. Now it's just time to build from this. Go recruit harder, bring in more and more talent from all over, and this women's basketball team can be just as dynamic as our men's team in a couple years.
Now, we've been talking a lot about basketball.
Yes.
But UWG baseball kicks off their season this time, 2 hours, in 20-something hours, 4 o'clock tomorrow.
Let's just say tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
UWG baseball kicks off their season, and I am so freaking excited. Last year went 31-18, had a really solid season, and we've just gotten one of the bigger transfer classes in recent UWG baseball history, so there's a lot of new guys. They're really trying to buff up this program, especially with the move to D1. They're trying to compete at a higher level, and I think that they're going to do just that this year. They're going to piggyback off the success that they had last year. I'm really excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think to expand on that, it's not even just that they brought in a lot of guys. They didn't lose many people.
Right.
They're bringing in they're bringing back Sam Ladner, who batted .340 and hit 10 home runs last year with 38 RBIs. He's a preseason All-GSE selection, and he's at the forefront of why we're number 25 in the coaches poll right now.
Now, I know we just switched to baseball, but back to basketball very quickly. This upcoming Saturday, we're on the road. A doubleheader, men's and women's, against Valdosta State. Potentially the last time we ever play the Blazers in the game of basketball. Now, I know a lot of you are in the metro Atlanta area or listening in from Florida. I know we got some people listening in California, other states. Love all Sports Pack fans no matter where you're at. But if you happen to be in the Valdosta area or anywhere in the radius, show up, show some pride, and scream, "Let's go Wolves," because guess what? We've been dominating Valdosta State in every single sport except the last football game.
Yeah, I'm going to say, let's not forget about that.
We are going to continue that dominance this Saturday. I don't see us losing another regular season game. I think we continue this dominance. College students who binge drink alcohol at least 3 times per week were roughly 6 times more likely to perform poorly on a test or project as a result of drinking. That is why Apprentice Sailors joined Wolf Radio and Wolf Sports Network's Drink Responsibly campaign to remind students drinking should be done responsibly and in an environment that discourages overindulging. Faculty will not take your hangovers as excuses.
The Dodgers introducing Shohei Ohtani after signing him to a record-breaking contract.
Nick Saban is retiring.
Breaking news on Sports Pack.
Breaking today. The last domino of the NFL coaching carousel has fallen. Dan Quinn, former Atlanta Falcons head coach, recently the former Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, becoming the Washington Commanders' next head football coach, replacing the legendary riverboat Ron Rivera. Richard, first of all, how do you feel about this hire? Obviously, people thought Ben Johnson might get it. They might go with another young guy like the Texans OC. Those guys stay put. They end up with Dan Quinn and grade it.
What did you just make up? Riverboat Ron Rivera? What was that?
No, that's his nickname. Everyone calls him Riverboat Ron.
I've never heard that in my life. Look, anyway, I mean, I don't mind the hire at all. I mean, a lot of us thought that Ben Johnson was going to go there, but then Ben Johnson announced that he wasn't leaving. What he's saying, Wolf Wall Street, I'm not leaving, and he's staying in Detroit, which is probably a good thing. Try to redo what they had going this year. He's probably getting a pay raise or whatever. Congratulations, Ben Johnson, staying in Detroit. I like that. A lot of OCs and DCs are just moving after having success.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm getting off topic, but I really like the hire of Dan Quinn. I mean, he was not a bad head coach in Atlanta. I mean, there were more so losing seasons. He's 46-44 as a head coach. I mean, he wasn't bad. The Falcons had a Super Bowl. Falcons had a Super Bowl appearance with him, a few very, very solid Falcons teams, and we know he's a very good defensive coach. One thing about the Commanders, they could use a little bit of help defensively. Now, they haven't been terrible, but they haven't been great as well. So bringing in Dan Quinn, I'm sure he's tweaked some things. He's going to approach things differently than he did in Atlanta, because the big thing about coaching, once you get fired, get another job somewhere else, learn from your mistakes, just learn from your mistakes. Fix what wasn't working, and so on and so forth. I'm sitting here struggling to gather my thoughts right now, but I think it's a very good hire. I mean, who knows? He might rebuild Washington. Washington might become relevant for the first time this century. I mean, there's no telling. I'd be happy to see Washington really have some success in football, and I don't know. I'm just interested to see. They have a lot to rebuild. They need to restructure the entire defense, D-line, secondary's bad. The whole team's bad. So Dan Quinn's in for a job, but I'm sure he's up for the challenge.
I was gonna say they're far from done with their offseason, right? Yes, you went and got your coach, and he's a great defensive-minded coach at that. I mean, he helped Dallas lead the league in turnovers. They were ranked top 10 in total yards given up, top 5 in a couple other categories. So yeah, great defense in Dallas, right? You've got that piece, and you've added it now, but they've got to do a lot more, like you said. They've got to restructure that entire defense, which now they have the market to do that because they went and got Dan Quinn. Players are going to want to come to Washington finally because they know the mindset that they bring. They know the type of culture that he brings. And you saw it with the Falcons, too. That defense, hard-hitting, fast, very electric defense in Atlanta whenever he was there. So I think it's a great move for Washington. I'd give it a B-plus grade. Only I wouldn't give it a higher one just because I'm not sure really how much true success he'll have just yet. It's kind of hard to tell, a brand new hire. But usually new coaching contracts are like 5 years long, right? They usually get them for about 5 years. This could very likely be the very last coaching tenure that Dan Quinn has. I'm very interested to see what he does with the last couple years of his career, see if he can find some success.
Yeah, I like this hire mainly because I look at it as a situation for Washington where it's like nobody really cares about Washington that much. Like Washington doesn't have anything to lose. It's not like the Falcons where they're looking at Arthur Blank and they're like, hey, you got to go get that guy because you got a roster that can win. People are looking like Washington and they're like, oh, they got Dan Quinn, nice.
Right.
So I think this is a good hire, one, for Dan Quinn because he's not as much in the limelight. The expectations aren't massive because he's inheriting a dumpster fire from many parts of that organization.
Yeah.
So truly, I think if Dan Quinn can go in there and put together a wild card season, or even just improve on what they have now, then people are going to look at this as a great move for Washington.
Okay, so on the surface level, for right now, I'll give it a B-. Now, that grade can fluctuate depending on who they bring in as OC, because that is incredibly important, especially with the number 2 overall pick in the draft. We all expect him to either end up with Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Right now in my mock, I have Drake May. Later on, we're going to talk about the draft quarterbacks. We'll get to that discussion then. What Dan Quinn provides is stability, and it's much-needed stability for a franchise that hasn't had it in a very long time. Now, I know what everyone thinks. Atlanta, yes, got into a Super Bowl, but they had Kyle Shanahan. There's a few uninspiring years there. He leaves, goes to Dallas. Dallas regular season defense, great. They get to the playoffs, it implodes, this, that, and the third. But Dan Quinn is experienced. He's loved by his players. He has a winning record as a head coach. And we look at this Washington team. We don't expect them, even though one person here sitting at the desk thinks they win 9 games next year, no one really expects Washington to go out and win 10 games, to make a wild card, to exceed these, expectations that are laid out in front of them, which is 6-11, 7-10, a good rookie season for Drake May, presuming that's who they get, putting weapons around him, putting a, nice culture in place for him to succeed. I just think the reason I'm still a little iffy on this is because this Washington hire to me should have been one of the easiest to make. Because you look at Washington, not only do you have a legendary franchise with 3 Super Bowls, you have a whole lot of cap space. Dan Snyder's gone. Your super terrible, bad owner no one liked. He's out. And you have a collective there that is willing to try to bring a championship to Washington. They're willing to do whatever it takes. They've shown that. And it's just interesting to me that of all the jobs that filled out, that was the last job. That was the last domino to fall. And I just don't really understand why. Maybe it's the uncertainty. Maybe it's because we don't really know much about the ownership group and how they'll operate. But I think this Washington, the Washington. It's hard. They've had so many team names. The Washington Commanders could have done a better job. But Dan Quinn is not the worst case scenario.
Definitely. But now, I was about to say, a team that made a very great hire, in my opinion, Seattle Seahawks. They went and got Mike McDonald from Baltimore. Pete Carroll was out. It was a crazy sight to see because during that time we had Saban retiring, Belichick was out on the Patriots, and then Pete Carroll out in the Seahawks. I mean, a legend for that entire franchise, just an all-around great guy, a coach that a lot of players love playing for. But they needed a coach, and they went out and got one of the best young minds in the entire NFL. Isn't he now the youngest NFL head coach at 36 years old?
I think he might be.
Yeah, probably.
He is, and he replaced the oldest head coach in Pete Carroll.
So that kind of gives you a little bit of a perspective as to where Seattle wants to go, right? They're like, all right, we've got a great defense full of a lot of young talent. We've got an offense that may need to make a little bit of, a couple adjustments in the offseason. But we think that we have a team that can have long-term success. That's what this hire is telling me, right?
Yeah, this is a Seattle Seahawks team that's a nose job away from being sexy. I mean, it's like there's a lot of key pieces here, and they just, like I said, they need a nose job. They just need a facelift. And, I mean, they went ahead and got rid of Pete Carroll. I love Pete Carroll. I've been watching Pete Carroll for years. But Pete Carroll was the oldest coach in the NFL, and it was to a point where you were starting to see it. Everybody loves Pete Carroll, but it was time to make a change. So to go out, they get Mike McDonald, a guy who's had a great defenses in Baltimore for the past few years. Great scheme. He's a great young mind. He's a very good defensive coordinator. I don't know. I'm not going to call him a great head coach yet because he hasn't head coached at all. But I think the Falcons made a very good hire based on what we've seen from Mike McDonald. They, we can say a very great hire based on what we've seen from him. There's a lot of young pieces on that defense. We've seen what he was able to do with a lot of the quote-unquote no-name corners that balled out in Baltimore, like Geno Stone and guys of that nature. I feel like he could really help retool this defense, get them back to prominence. I'm not going to compare them to the Legion of Boom because that's an all-time defense. When your defense has a name, especially one like the Legion of Boom, it's hard to compare anything to them, but he can get them back to being prominent defensively. They need to shift a few things on offense. They need an edge rusher defensively. It wouldn't hurt to stack up that O-line. A new quarterback within the next year and a half or two wouldn't hurt at all. I wouldn't be surprised to see them draft a quarterback this year. Maybe he might not start immediately because Geno's still solid, but it's definitely time to start looking to the future with quarterback. So like I said, they're a nose job away from being sexy. A few things need to change. They changed the big thing, getting a new head coach. Now it's time to make a few roster moves to try to get Seattle back to playing Seahawk-level football.
Right. I mean, I look at this hire, and we could say, oh, this is a great hire for the Seahawks. I think this is a great hire for Mike McDonald. Like, where else would you want to start your coaching career when you have the guy that was the head coach now working in the front office in Pete Carroll? So he's still there to help McDonald run the ship. The culture, I don't think, is going to change that much, and the roster's solid. So I think Mike McDonald hit a home run.
It's a great safety blanket.
It's a positive environment. The groundwork that Pete Carroll laid out there, everybody loves Pete Carroll. No matter how sour they were leaving Seattle, like Russ had an ugly exit, and he still went and surprised Pete Carroll after he stepped down as Seahawks head coach. I'm like, that is one of the most positive. That is like the most consistently positive environment in the NFL. Like you said, Jackson. if I'm Mike McDonald, I'm doing a heel click out of the Ravens office like that. Like, I'm happy to go because that is the perfect place to be. Like, imagine going to Washington instead. I mean, Washington's been a mess. You're going to Seattle. Look, I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. Honestly, I give this higher an A. I think this is a home run for multiple reasons. First off, this Ravens defense shut out the Chiefs in the second half of the AFC Championship game. Everyone wants to highlight how bad the offense was, but that defense stepped up when it mattered. They played consistent, dominant football all season long, picking off Brock Purdy 4 times in the biggest marquee matchup of the year that ended up being a blowout. There's a lot of fault we can place on this Ravens organization for blowing the AFC Championship game, but really it all rests on the shoulders of John Harbaugh and Todd Monken. We look at really the best coach on that staff right now, Mike McDonald, as a young gun, a superstar, someone who can go and reestablish the Legion of Boom days in Seattle because everyone loves these young, great offensive coordinators. Look at who the Panthers hired, Dave Canales. He comes in, he's young, he's fresh, he's a great offensive mind, but guess what? We just saw a defensive-minded coach, a guy that I've been very critical of lately, Dan Campbell, get his team to the Super Bowl. And we look at the history of the Seattle Seahawks, like I said, with the Legion of Boom, with the incredible secondaries they've had, the incredible linebackers. There is no reason that Mike McDonald cannot come in to the Seattle Seahawks team and kind of sharpen the culture back to what it was. Because I feel like under Pete Carroll, as great as he was, that culture had begun to kind of slip a little bit. It was fractured a little bit. I mean, the relationship with Russell Wilson, the dynamic between the players, it was broken, it was stale, it was old. But Mike McDonald can come in. He can sign big free agents, change the culture, and guess who's a free agent this year? Patrick Queen, Justin Matabike.
yeah.
2 key Ravens defensive players are free agents.
Hey, man.
They might follow their defensive coordinator, and guess what? This Seattle team is looking at 10 wins. This Seattle team is looking at a wild card berth and potentially more.
Now, I like what you just said there, especially with Matabike. I'm not sure about Patrick Queen, though.
Yeah.
Talking to Christian yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised to see Patrick Queen go to Green Bay. That makes a lot of sense to me because Jordan Brooks is still on that Seattle Seahawks team. He's been a little injured the past few years, but when he's healthy, he's a 100-plus tackle linebacker. And then Bobby Wagner was first-team All-Pro this year, and everybody just forgot about that. He had a season. And Jamal Adams is still there. He can't catch. Might as well move him to edge rusher. Oh, my gosh, he makes me sick sometimes. Let's move on.
Now,
let's move on.
These Ravens players might follow Mike McDonald. You can follow Dine West on Instagram at UWGDine_West to keep up on dining hall hours and retail hours. Never get caught missing good food or closings when you're hungry. Now, when we get back, it's NBA time, baby.
This is Super Bowl champion quarterback Brad Johnson, and you're listening to Sports Pack on the Wolf Sports Network.
There, listen through radio, go drive your car, do whatever you got to do, work out. I don't know what you're doing, it's your prerogative. Or go ahead and hop back over to YouTube or Twitch and come look at us talk about sports. I mean, really, it's the best of both worlds. You can hear us, you can see us. I mean, come on. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another season of Sports Outta Pocket. We will be back next semester, better than ever.
Guess who's back? That's right, Sports Outta Pocket is back for Season 3. With brand new Fire Me Ups,
Philadelphia Phillies, what happened?
and special interviews you don't want to miss.
This is the Philly Sports Guy, and you're listening to Sports Outta Pocket.
Every Wednesday at 5, only on Wolf Sports Network.
In a recent survey, almost 53% of full-time college students ages 18 to 22 drank alcohol in the past month. That is why Printer's Ale has joined Wolf Radio and Wolf Sports Network's Drink Responsibly campaign to remind you there is no drinking under the age of 21. Never drink and drive, even if it's just one beer. And add food and water when you drink so you don't end up texting your ex. Know your limits.
The NBA is back. Let's go.
Schroeder, LeBron doing it again with first slam from Schroeder.
Real quick shout out to Schrader and I's Miami Heat snapping a 7-game losing streak, defeating the Sacramento Kings last night. Thank God.
Light the beam.
Light the beam for Miami, because honestly, we were in the dumps.
Yeah.
Now I feel a little bit better. And another shout out goes to the Portland Trail Blazers getting their revenge on the Damian Lillard-led Milwaukee Bucks, a 119-116 W at home. Now, I want to talk about the Eastern Conference because obviously we see the Bucks, they have a really good record, but they've been struggling, not really living up to their expectations. Miami got off to a great start, but even with last night's win, the 7 losses in 8 games, not looking that hot. The Celtics getting blown out by the Clippers a few days ago, not really as hot as they were to begin the year. Looking at this Eastern Conference, what teams do we see as true contenders among all the pretenders?
I mean, it's hard to count out the Bucks and the Celtics because we know what they can be at their best. While all these teams have been like fairly inconsistent, we know what they can be. I'm still iffy on the Bucks. They just switched up their head coach mid-season. I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. They still have a talented enough roster to make a push, but I'm not really sure how that's going to pan out. The Celtics, we know the Celtics are a squad. They're going to be there no matter what. They've got the players. They've been balling on. All these players have been together for years, and them adding Porzingis to that roster has really just elevated them. And then the 76ers are very interesting because in the past few years, we've really seen them stall out in the playoffs. But recently, this regular season, Joel Embiid being injured, he's been having like a bunch of minor injuries that have been sidelining him for 1 to 2 games. Then he'll come back and have like another injury, tweak his knee or something strange like that. So now they're being hit with the injury bug in one of the seasons where they finally look like they could actually contend for a title. So I'm not really sure. There's a lot of inconsistency going on. I'd like to see these. It's still pretty early. We're just now getting into February, so All-Star break's coming up. So soon we'll really see these teams after All-Star break in March begin to fall into shape. But as of right now, it's just a big question mark around the entire Eastern Conference.
Definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to agree with Richard. I mean, it's earlier in the season. I mean, you can kind of see who's going to be contending at what level now.
Yeah.
But basketball is one of those sports where when it comes to the playoffs and you get to the end of the season, it's just who catches fire at the right time. So I think later in the seasons when the answer to that question is going to be pretty clear.
I mean, one team, and I know you just talked about it, you're fans of them, but Miami is a team that still shouldn't be counted out because I feel like that's one of those teams where when the playoffs roll around is when they take it up to another level. Jimmy Butler starts to care a little bit more. Just made a great trade recently for Terry Rozier. I mean, that was a phenomenal trade. Came out of nowhere. I think you gave up just enough for him. If not, I think you could have given up a little bit more for him. So I think Miami is turning in the right direction. Yes, you just had that awful losing streak, but getting that win was really important, especially heading into the All-Star break pretty soon. You're going to need a little bit of momentum before you lose it all again. So I think that the Heat is a team you really can't count out right now. They're still in the thick of it. That's still a squad that's really going to contend really well when it comes to playoffs.
Now, see, here's my thing with the East, right? I know I was talking about contenders and pretenders, but right now, I really think it depends on the matchups, right? Because Boston's, I hate to say it, most hated team in the NBA, and it's not even close for me, but they're the best team in the East. I mean, they have to be heavy favorites to get to the finals. Now, if Milwaukee gets the 2 seed, if that's the Eastern Conference Finals matchup, Dame's getting more adjusted, Giannis is on a hot streak, We've seen Giannis take down the Celtics before. He can do it again. But the problem is the Bucks are susceptible to an early round loss. Say Miami gets the 7 seed. We just saw last year our Heat take them down. There's no there's no reason they can't do it again. I doubt it'd be in 5 again, but they could do it in 6, do it in 7. They have the personnel. They have the better coach, in my opinion. They check all the not even in my opinion, in everyone's opinion who knows basketball. I mean, Eric Spoelstra is going to coach circles around Doc Rivers. But to me, the East is very matchup dependent. Whereas when I look at the West, I see 2 teams that are destined for a conference finals showdown. Now, I know the Thunder are incredible. Hats off to them. I think Shea's a top 3 MVP candidate. He might end up winning the thing, right? The Timberwolves, they're incredible. I know, Richard, you're a big Ant fan.
Just Lord.
I mean, he's incredible. I mean, if he's not a top 10 player now, he will be very, very soon. But the West, in my opinion, comes down to the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, I know I picked the Lakers to win the finals in the preseason. They're not looking so hot right now, 24-25. They got to play the Celtics tonight. I still think they can make noise in the playoffs. They might make a trade before the deadline. This is a team just like the Miami Heat. They cannot be counted out. But
the street's saying the GM on the way.
And what have we seen in the past? Whenever the GM comes through, they make a deep run. But looking at the Clippers and the Nuggets right now, we know what we're getting, and that's championship-level basketball.
Yep.
So I want to pose a question to the desk at Sports Pack. 7-game series right now. Clippers, Nuggets, full health. Who wins and in how many games?
Oh, man.
Full health and the way they're playing right now,
Gotta go
I'd have to
Clippers.
give it to the Clippers.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that Denver Nuggets team. They've showed up and showed out. They got championship pedigree. We know they can compete with the best of them, but as things have been going this season, the Nuggets have been driving some ball games, and the Clippers have not as of recently. I mean, they've been getting complete production from everybody. Kawhi Leonard's been hooping. He looks happy doing it, as happy as Kawhi Leonard's going to look. Paul George has been balling out and doing his podcast. Russell Westbrook shows up exactly when he needs to at the right time and gives them the production that they need. And James Harden has revitalized his career. I think this Clippers team is in the best position that they've ever been to win a ring. If the Clippers are going to do it and make it to the finals, this is the year to do it.
Definitely.
Like, this is the last year to do it because the window's closing after this.
You're going to see a lot of guys not on that team next year.
Exactly. James Harden's probably going to be out. Paul George, I think he's a free agent after this year. Like, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces, and you got to move a lot of money around to keep this team. So if it's going to get done, this would have to be the year to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I say give me Clippers in like 6. Because I'm not going to say the Nuggets would get killed because I watched the Nuggets play the Heat in the finals last year. And Jokic just like, he's the most unathletic superstar athlete I've ever seen in my life.
They're unreal.
He just like flicks the ball from the three-point line and just drills it every time. It makes no sense to me. So I think they'd contend. They'd give them a little bit of a fight, but there's no way they're beating the Clippers right now.
Honestly, I'd go Clippers in 7. If you listen to our last show, you know I said that they should be the NBA title favorite. I know a lot banks on their health. We've seen Paul George with a devastating injury history. We've seen Kawhi with a devastating injury history. But those two guys are playing super elite, efficient, and healthy basketball right now. I think as the season winds down, the Clippers are going to prioritize health over seeding. But I don't think it matters where they're seated right now. I think this Clippers team is loaded. Russell Westbrook's playing the best ball he has since he's been in Oklahoma City. James Harden is revitalized with a new mindset. I am loving what this Clippers team is doing. Now, let's play a quick game, guys. I'm going to list different restaurants, and you're going to tell me whether this is where Sports Pack is going to watch the NBA playoffs in a few months, okay?
Okay.
Taco Mac?
No.
Nah.
Buffalo Wild Wings?
Oh, no, God,
Absolutely
no.
not.
A Mexican restaurant?
You got to get more specific.
How about Jefferson's and Carrollton?
Oh, yes, Lord.
Yeah, buddy. Yes, please.
Jefferson's and Carrollton's dine-in or carry-out with online ordering will fit any schedule and any need. Download their app now for Jefferson's in your belly later. Jefferson's and Carrollton's open Sunday to Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Thursday to Saturday, 10:30 a.m. to 11 p.m.
It may not be March, but the madness has already begun.
Up in time, Clark for the win! There's a takeaway and a run on the poster. Dante Scott absolutely throttles the rim.
Huge upset in the land of college basketball last night. The Florida Gators, I know you hate this, Jackson Schrader, cover your ears, knocking off the number 10 Kentucky Wildcats in Rupp Arena 94-91 in an overtime clash. for the ages. Now, hats off to the Gators. We all know they used to have an elite basketball program, went back-to-back with Joakim Noah, Carlos Boozers, those boys. Fell off recent years, but guess what? They seem to be back, maybe not to that level, but they'll probably be back to, a 7, 8, 9 perennial March Madness seed. And you can pick them maybe to go to the elite, to the Sweet 16 some years, Elite 8 some years, maybe not even the Bradley Beal era Gators, but they're back. Hats off to them. But this conversation needs to circle around the Kentucky Wildcats because for so many years, we've seen them fall short. We've seen John Calipari. Yes, he has one national championship, but other than that and a few other Final Four runs, it's really been seasons of shortcomings and failure for John Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats. Now, we always know he's flirted with the NBA. We know he's been someone who hasn't really been all in at Kentucky for some time. Do we think John Calipari and Kentucky are headed for Splitsville? And will John Calipari be an NBA coach within the next few years?
Yeah, how about no?
Good answer.
I don't see that happening at all. I mean, you could say that, but John Calipari's been at Kentucky for years. He's had success for years. And the past few times, they've been highly seeded teams with flaws getting into the tournament, and they would face teams that were perfectly equipped to expose their flaws. I mean, even this team right now, they've had top-tier recruiting classes come in year after year, and even this team has flaws. But they're still in the top 10. They might be number 10, but they're in the top 10. And this is a dynamic offensive team. They've got guys up and down that bench that can come in and drop 30 if they have to. I mean, this is a very deep Kentucky squad. And, it's so deep to the point where a lot of these players aren't going to be one and done. You might see a few leave, but a lot of these players are going to be here for their second, and third might be a little ambitious, but definitely their second year. So I think John Calipari knows that he has a good team this year, a team that can maybe make it to the Sweet 16. But next year, if they can keep a lot of these pieces, this team could really gel and turn into a team that we could see in the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, Calipari's not going anywhere. There's no way he's leaving. I don't see that happening. I think my big thing with Kentucky right now is how are they going to respond after dropping 2 of their last 3 conference games? Yeah. They lost to South Carolina, and they just lost to Florida. I think what you're going to see the character of this team through their response to these losses. And I think that's where we're going to see, can Calipari get this deep team to come together and play like the West Georgia Wolves.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's the standard, the Bama standard.
Saying.
UWG standard.
Now, the reason I pose that question is because you look at John Calipari, he's 64 years old, which obviously, we've seen Nick Saban, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick coach into their 70s, no problem, until they end up retiring. Now, college basketball is an incredibly strenuous sport to coach, especially John Calipari. He's a very passionate coach. He holds himself in a very high regard. I look at Kentucky and I wonder, is this a situation where John Calipari feels like he's going to continue, and he's going to continue getting these great recruiting classes, don't get me wrong, but is he going to love that grind going into March every single year, and say they don't go on a Final Four run in the next 2 years, say they get bounced in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, whatever. At what point does that fatigue start to kick in? At what point does the NBA not sound a little bit better? Because say he goes to the NBA, he wins 45 games, they get to the playoffs, this and that. The pageantry is not the same. It doesn't take as much energy. You're not, representing an entire university. You're more of an employee. Because think about college coaches. We look at them as the general manager. We look at them almost as the president. They represent. They are the ambassador. If you're a coach, you just go in, do your job, go home. I feel like if you look at John Calipari, that might become very attractive to him, especially when you look at the NBA. He's got so many cats in there anyway. I think Kentucky is on a little bit of a fall, and I think the rest of the SEC is on a little bit of a rise. We see South Carolina, who deserves their respect. They deserve to be ranked. Right now, they're one of the hottest teams in the country. We see a team in Alabama, no bias, with the best offense in the country. We see a team in Tennessee, consistently great, consistently a veteran, hard-nosed squad. Hate to say it, Auburn, another great team. As we see the SEC rise around Kentucky, we see Kentucky start to fall a little bit. And I feel like Cal is one of those guys that looks at that conference, or looked at that conference as his playground. He dominated it for so many years. And all of a sudden, we're starting to look at the SEC like it's the new ACC. It's getting to the level of the Big 12. Child. Yes, Richard, I said it.
Come on.
It is not getting to the level of the Big 12.
It's getting there.
There is no conference in America close to the level that the Big 12 has been playing with basketball. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. See, you knew exactly what to say to get me going. But look, that's what she said. But look, listen, yes, the rest of the SEC is rising to the occasion. John Calipari's been balling out. But listen, if you're a great head coach, the rest of your conference elevating should inspire you to go even harder. If you're really as good as everybody thinks you are, you're going to see, okay, everybody in this league is starting to get better. Now, let me really bring it and show why I'm one of the greatest coaches to ever do it. If I'm a head coach, I see that as a challenge. That's just throwing wood on the fire for me. That's making me go even harder to prove that. But your point to the SEC, I'm as close to an SEC homer as you're going to get. If it wasn't for the University of Georgia, I wouldn't exist. My parents met at UGA. I mean, like, I'm as SEC homer as you can get. And I'll say it, the SEC might be, you could argue in format. And then you look at a conference like the Big East with team like UConn that just won the national championship, for God's sake. They're still number one with like a perfect balance between offense and defense. They're a grueling team that they'll grind you down every time you play. It might be close all the way through, but by the time it gets to about 5 minutes, you're going to look up, wait, how do we get down 20? Then you've got Marquette, who's dynamic offensively. They're always scrappy defensively, but their offense is ridiculous. You've got Creighton. You got teams like Seton Hall. Creighton's going to kill anybody offensively. If Creighton gets hot, they can beat anybody in the country. I mean, I love the SEC, but we've got some great conferences out here with college basketball. We cannot even speak the SEC in the same sentence as those other conferences.
Look, sometimes when you call your shot, you got to read the tea leaves. You got to look at trends. This year in recruiting, the SEC has 4 teams in the top 10. The Big 12 only has 2. Next year in recruiting, it's very early, but next year in recruiting, the SEC has 4 teams in the top 10. The Big 12 has 2. Now, I understand in basketball, it's different than football. Rosters are constructed far differently. Recruiting has a completely different strategy for these programs and these coaches. But the SEC is getting the talent. For many years, it was just Kentucky getting the talent. Now you have Alabama, Auburn, South Carolina. Missouri's raking in incredible classes. I think what these SEC programs are showing the world, not even the country, I'm going to say the world, because there's college football and college basketball fans everywhere these days. But I think with the days of the NIL, you have so many rich schools down in the South. Yeah. They have so much influence, so much clout. They're able to show these kids, hey, yes, Alabama, Auburn, South Carolina, these schools are famous for football, but the tides are changing. These basketball programs, the games sell out. The students, the fans, the people in those states go crazy for college basketball now. And if you're a kid coming in, you can look at these schools and say, I can be treated like an Alabama football player as an Alabama basketball player. I can go to Auburn and I'm going to be treated the same. Or actually, Auburn, the basketball players have been getting more preferential treatment the last few years because they've turned into somewhat of a basketball school, with the football team going 6-7, with the basketball team, you know, obviously making great runs, being one of the best teams in the SEC. So all I'm saying is, yes, the Big 12's on top right now, but the SEC is trending in the right direction. Now, a quick break, and when we come back, NFL Draft Talk.
Hey, this is Andy Bunker from 92.9 The Game, and you're listening to the Wolf Sports Network.
This is Sports Pack.
I think Mahomes, Reed, Swift, Kelsey, all of them go into M&T Bank Stadium and get the job done. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs winning the AFC Championship and sending home the Baltimore Ravens.
I want to see the Lions in the Super Bowl, but I think the 49ers are going to overwhelm them.
Sports Pack is back Mondays and Thursdays at 6, only on Wolf Sports Network.
Did you know on-campus dining fits all your dietary needs? Head over to the Grill for a burger patty and the salad bar for a delicious low-carb meal. Follow Dine West on Instagram at UWGDine_West to keep up your campus dining options.
In the NFL, only one thing matters: chasing a dynasty.
This upcoming NFL draft has a whole lot of hype. We're going to be back for the entire first round on Wolf Sports Network.
Richard was just shaking. That's how excited he was.
Man, it was one of them yawns that touch your soul.
Well, this draft is about to touch every football fan's soul, okay?
Weird.
We're kicking off Sports Pack 2024's NFL draft coverage by talking about the most important position on the field.
O-line?
I mean, really, though.
Quarterbacks.
Oh.
The consensus top 5 right now: Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix. Now, here at the desk, we have very differing opinions on these star quarterback prospects, and I don't even know who to kick it to first because all the opinions are so differing. Actually,
why are you pointing at me?
Schrader,
I'll take it.
Richard, you couldn't be more right, because this man right here, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gavin Ellis, has some of the hottest NFL draft takes this cycle that a young man has ever heard in his life. So, Gavin,
look,
get into it.
It's really not that crazy if you really think about it, okay? You know, when you're looking at this NFL draft, there's been a consensus top 5 order of picks, and just normal top 5 picks. That everyone's kind of stuck to, you know, pretty much. Maybe the bottom 2 might switch a little bit, but for the most part, everyone has said Caleb Williams should go first, Drake May should go second, Marvin Harrison should go third, and then you maybe throw in, you know, maybe Jaden Daniels now. The bottom 2 have kind of, you know, switched around, like I said, but everyone has said for the most part that Caleb Williams deserves to be a top 5 pick, deserves to be the number 1 pick. I don't think he does. At all. I don't think he deserves to be the 2nd overall pick. I don't think he deserves to be the 3rd overall pick. I don't even know if he might slip out of the top 5 in my opinion. And that may sound crazy, right? Everybody's looking at me.
Yeah, how doesn't he deserve to be
you're
a
crazy.
top
You're
5
crazy.
pick?
Right. And I'm not saying that, you know, he's not talented. I'm not saying that he's not capable of being that top 5 pick, being the number 1 pick, but the level of play that I've seen a lot of these guys have that last half of college football season, and a lot of the guys that you saw playing in the playoff, like Michael Penix even, you saw a lot of guys really boost their draft stock as a whole, right? Caleb Williams, he's had the success. He won the Heisman, right? But this last season was a season to forget for him, in my opinion. He couldn't find a way to win at USC. He had a lot of talent around him. You can blame the defense, but at the same time, if he's this number 1 pick that everyone's been raving about, he should have been the one that's able to pull USC out of those fights and get them more wins, get into the playoff. Well, you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I mean, because you sound crazy, but keep going.
How do I sound crazy?
But keep going.
Let me ask you the question. In what world is it crazy to put that pressure on a quarterback that's supposed to be the number 1 pick and say, this guy should have gotten the more wins? This guy should have been able to take that team with all that talent on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think that that's crazy, which is why I think that I'm looking at other quarterbacks and saying, hey, I might want these guys over him. And I'm only saying that he drops out of the top 5 because of the way that it's laid out with other positions like receiver with Marvin Harrison. You got to look at that's the way I look at it. If I'm an NFL GM, I'm saying, well, this guy, he had a lot of talent, and yes, he had success before, but he couldn't find a way to win in the year where it mattered most. So I'm looking at it this way. I'm looking at the reigning Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels, and yes, he took that LSU team and he turned that offense into an offense that was able to carry a bad defense, something Caleb Williams couldn't really do. So I'm looking at it this way. I think that I'd take Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams. I'm thinking that I'd take Michael Penix over Caleb Williams. I'm thinking I'd even go in as far as to say I'd take Bo Nix for the NFL, because I think that these are guys that can walk into an NFL franchise and find immediate success. I think Caleb needs a little bit more help than these guys. That's what I'm saying.
Caleb Williams, his sophomore season, his second year, his first year at USC, he carried a team with a bad defense as far as you can. The same way Jaden Daniels did. Jaden Daniels did his best to carry that LSU team, but they still ended up suffering, 3 or 4 losses this season because the defense was so bad. And as a quarterback, you can only do so much. Caleb Williams is deserving to go number 1 and deserving to go top 3, period, just because of sheer talent. We've seen him do it over 2 years in a row. He's thrown for over 4,500 yards in both years. He's extremely accurate, and he does not turn over the football. The only way I would criticize Caleb Williams is how he moves in the pocket. I don't like how he doesn't step up in the pocket, and he hasn't shown the ability to be a consistently well pocket passer that can really maneuver the pocket of his own. He kind of backpedals and does other crazy things of that nature that I don't think are really going to hold up against NFL capable defensive lines. But when I look at him based on what he's done at USC, he's done everything he's been expected to do. When you have a defense that gives up 45 points a game, no matter who you're playing, it's hard to win every game. He had to pull magic out of a hat his sophomore year to get to 9 wins, but when you're going like that and then play elevates in the Pac-12. His sophomore year, play was down in the Pac-12. But this year, the Pac-12 play was up. There were teams up and down the Pac-12. Even Arizona was a top team, a fringe playoff contender if there would have been 12 seeds this year. So when you have that and you have a terrible defense and play in your conference comes up, you can ball out as much as you want. But if your defense can't stop a toddler from getting in the refrigerator at midnight, I mean, there's really nothing you can do about it. I don't really hold that defense against Caleb Williams. They were historically bad. They were worse than they were his sophomore year. I think Caleb Williams has done everything to deserve being a top pick. He's extremely accurate, freakishly strong arm. He's mobile, and he doesn't turn the football over. I just say he needs to improve the way he moves in the pocket, and he can be a good quarterback. His potential is through the roof.
Yeah, let me be a happy medium here. Do I think that Caleb Williams deserves a top 5 pick? Yes. Top 3 pick? Yes. I'm a little hesitant at number 1, and it's not what he does on the field's amazing. He's a great quarterback, right? He wasn't necessarily the reason USC didn't win. Some of the things off the field, and not the crying in his mother's arms after a tough loss, but that doesn't help. But I'm not going to hold that against him because it was a frustrating loss. He did all he could do, and the defense just wasn't able to pull it out of the hat. However, some of the things, looking at it as from a character standpoint, as the saying, whoever drafts me, I want partial ownership of that team. If you say that 10 years ago, they're going to laugh at you and not draft you. And I think some of the other things is looking at it from, if that's how he handled losing games in college, he's not going to get drafted to a team that's just going to go out there and win.
Right.
Very rarely do you get a situation like C.J. Stroud where you're just going to go out there and you're going to take a team that was awful the year before and take them and win a playoff game. So I'm more up to question on whether he's going to be a quarterback that can really make a name for himself in the NFL.
And that's where my argument somewhat lies. It's not so much that I don't think he has the talent to be a top pick. I think that all the talent is there, yes. But I'm not sure how he's going to be able to handle those tough losses. I'm not sure if he's as NFL ready as these other quarterbacks. I think that Bo Nix could walk into any NFL franchise right now, and even if he loses a bunch of games, I think that he'd have the resiliency to come back and play well year after year after year. I don't know if I can say the same about Caleb Williams. Based on the limited amount of success that he did see with him in USC, he had a lot of great moments, but those losses took him down. You could tell that you could see it visibly. He didn't know how to handle it, and it only gets harder in the NFL. You're playing the absolute best of the best. That's where my question lies with Caleb Williams, and that's why I don't know if he should be the top pick in the draft. That's why I don't know if I'd take other guys below him.
I understand y'all's concerns, but that's just a part of growing up. He's going to there were some times where they had some ugly losses, and he didn't take it on the chin how he should have. He didn't handle like Jalen Hurts and go and drop 3 quotes he found on TikTok that day before and get his way through the press conference. Yeah, that's just part of growing up. He's going to have to figure out how to handle losses, how to build up from them and learn from them. He's going to have to handle things differently. I agree with that. But the whole thing that he doesn't deserve it, he's done everything to deserve. Like, from a scouting perspective, you look at everything, he checks every single box. There are some times where he kind of took the deep shot instead of hitting his check down. Okay, cool. There are a few things that needs to work on: pocket presence, getting through his progression, settling for the check down, not always going after the big play like Josh Allen. From a scouting perspective, he flat out checks every box. He has everything to be a transcendent prospect. He deserves to go top 3.
Yeah, really quickly, I don't necessarily know if NFL teams are looking for a guy that's still growing up.
Right.
I think that's just the big question mark.
Here's the thing, right? Caleb Williams, I'm not saying he's going to be Patrick Mahomes, but that's who a lot of people compare him to from a skill set perspective. Patrick Mahomes' senior season at Texas Tech, they went 5-7. They gave up an average of 43 points per game. They put up 43 points per game. But guess what? That defense was terrible. He was having to ball out every single week, trying to put up 50 to win. Caleb Williams, I'm not the biggest fan of some of his antics, okay? But when I watch Caleb Williams, I see the ceiling of a Patrick Mahomes. I see the ceiling of someone who is transcendent, who can be a savior of a franchise. I think the same thing about Drake May. They're my 1A, 1B. I think they are both superstar level talents, and I think they will both have great success in the NFL. You look at what Caleb Williams did. 8-5 this year, putting up 41 points per game. Did all he could. I mean, you have to put up darn near 50 points. You look at the game against Colorado, a shootout against a team that we saw was terrible the rest of the way. Yes, they got off to a great start, but what they did to that USC defense, what Caleb Williams had to go out there and do every single drive to compete with a Deion Sanders team when he just brought in 70 kids and kind of made a makeshift dream Sun team, whatever you want to call it. Caleb Williams in no way, shape, or form should be outside the top 2 picks. If the Chicago Bears or the Washington Commanders pass up on Caleb Williams as their quarterback, that would be on the level of Mitch Trubisky going second and letting Mahomes fall all the way to 7 to the Kansas City Chiefs. In my opinion, that would be one of the biggest missteps in NFL history. Even if he ends up being a bust, you have to go with the talent, and there isn't a long list of guys with more talent than Caleb Williams. That's all the time we have for tonight's Sports Pack. Next week, we're going to get into the Chicago Bears, what they should do with the number 1 overall pick. But once again, a round of applause for Triple Threats, Jackson Schrader joining the show. Gavin for his incredible return.
Thank you.
Make sure you guys tune in Monday. We're going to be back and better than ever for Richard, Jackson, Gavin, and Brendan. This has been Sports Pack.
You are now listening to WSN, Wolf Sports Network.